Hello, teacher. Good night. How are you?
Hello, Jose. Good evening. I'm okay. Do you hear me?
Yes, I hear you clear and perfect. Do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Good evening, Julian. Okay, as soon as we have two more students, we will start. Hello, Felix. Good evening. Do you hear me?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Felix. I can hear you.
Good evening.
Hello. We are waiting more students to start the encounter.
Yeah.
I'm gonna wait 1 minute more and then we will start.
Okay, perfect. I will be wearing. Okay, perfect.
Okay. Good evening, Sebastian. How are you?
Hello, teacher. I'm fine. Thank you. What about you?
Good. I'm good. Thank you. Okay. We're going to start the encounter now. So tonight we're going to discuss about how to grade oral performance and the types of tests that we have, not also for speaking, but also for scoring the other skills. there was an exercise that was aimed at finding out those issues that come up when we assess students' oral performance. I would like to know if any of you had the time to check the video and to work on the exercise. I'm talking about the video that is here in a stage, in step number 2.
Yes,
It,
teacher.
okay. Fernando, so did you have the time to watch the video and to use the rubric?
Yes, actually, I watched the video, and what I could notice from that video was the following thing. The student number one, he had bad pronunciation. If I'm not wrong, like the problem, like they're mixing up the problem. But the most important thing that I noticed was that the bad pronunciation.
Okay. Did you use the rubric to grade the student's performance?
Yes, yes. So what I did was the following thing. So I'm going to read the description, the descriptor, the score that I gave the person, and some notes that I wrote.
Okay.
Okay, so the first skill, it said phonological, I'm sorry, control and fluency. So general, clear, and fluent, very easy to understand. The score that I gave the person was, I was not clear about the score, if it's from 0 to 5 or from 10 to 100. So what I did was I graded from 0 to 5. So generally clear, very easy to understand. What I placed right there was 1.5. Mostly clear, minor difficulties with pronunciation, intonation, and fluidity. What I put right there was a 1, just 1.
Okay. Well,
Sometimes clear, some.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. The phonological control and fluency was the skill that needed to be scored, and what you have on the
Yes.
right are the 4 possibilities. So if the student
Okay.
the student got 1. If the student if what the student said was mostly clear, the student got 0.75. If what the student said was sometimes clear, the student got 0.50.
Okay, I understand. It's like yes. I'm so sorry. Yes. So let me redo it again. I'm so sorry. I
Don't worry.
apologize. So in order to the rubric, I'm sorry. So the skill, yes. Let's talk about the skill. The skill is phonological control and fluency. I would say, according to the video, I would say unclear, I'm sorry, sometimes clear, some problems with pronunciation and intonation. I noticed that the students had a bad pronunciation, but it wasn't that bad. But it's important for us to know how to pronounce some words. Task fulfillment and vocabulary. I would say somewhat complete, not very thorough in the answer, little vocabulary. I think that it's very important for us to have the full vocabulary. And if we're teachers, we need to focus on vocabulary. When we teach vocabulary, we need to focus on vocabulary. The next topic, the next skill, I'm sorry, it will be structure. And I would say that the structure of the student, some accuracy in complete sentence.
So it will be
And
1.5.
yes, 1.5.
Okay. Did you write any notes on the specific mistakes that the student made?
No, no problem.
What I write is that pronunciation. It is important to examine interacts because he sometimes interacts, but not the whole time. Um, Sometimes he speaks Spanish too, so that's important to make it clear in the rubric that you must not speak Spanish. That's very important. Also, when the use of goes or does, he says like he go instead of he goes. Um, Also, the pronunciation. I write comments about pronunciation. Pronunciation must be clear, so fluency can improve. Uh, it didn't have a good grammar as well. And for the questions, I write that it is important for them to be clear on the questions they make.
Okay. Thank you, Jose. Carlos, Felix, Diana, and Julian, do you guys know the difference between analytical rubric and holistic rubric?
Teacher, can you repeat again? Analytic and?
Holistic rubric.
Okay,
So
please
by
let me.
instance, the rubric that we see on the screen, what type of rubric is that one?
So, what did you say? Holistic or analytic?
Or analytical?
Holistic or analytic? Well, in the research that I did in the test, I didn't find anything about analytical and holistic. I don't remember the word holistic, but could it be analytic? That is analyzing all different elements like fluency, pronunciation, vocabulary, grammar. Is that right? I'm not sure. I'm just trying to get.
That's right, Diana. So this one is analytical because of the reason you mentioned. It's analyzing three different skills that were grouped. So structure, vocabulary and task fulfillment is other group, and phonological control and fluency is other group. So this rubric was created for a language center of a university, and as you can see, the most important for that place was uh, to have students be accurate because they were given 3 points if the students didn't make mistakes during the oral test. But students were only given 1 point if they were good at vocabulary and if they answered completely the task, and they were given 1 point more if they had good phonological control and they were fluent. So this one was designed uh, for that language center with the ideas of the teachers that worked in that place. The descriptors, as you can see, what they try to do is to help the teachers or the scorers or the raters to choose the correct grade. So that's why number one for fluency and phonological control means that students were clear and fluent, and so on and so forth. So the words that we have in the descriptors try to help the rater to choose the correct score. And the idea of having the gaps or the spaces that are under the column of structure notes is to give students feedback about the mistakes they made or the good things they did during the test. Good. So I would like any of you tell me if you use the rubric and the score that you gave to the boy. For instance, Jose
Second
gave
student? The boy was the second student.
yes, the second student. For instance, Jose gave to that student 2.5. If we add all what he mentioned, he gave 0.5 to fluency and phonological control, 0.5 to task fulfillment and vocabulary, and 1.5 to structure. So that's 2.5 as the total score. So I would like to have other person to tell us the experience by using this rubric to score the second student, the boy.
Teacher, just to mention something about the second student. I saw the girl was a bit more confident when she was speaking. The boy always needed like help from the examiner, and he was always looking for confirmation in the girl. You know, like he was trying to repeat the questions when he was saying it. So I actually analyzed different elements like fluency, pronunciation, grammar, but I didn't give him at the end a final score.
Did you write it down?
Vocabulary. I did, yes. It's difficult to hear now, teacher Diana.
I can hear you, Diana. Could you repeat?
There is okay, it's okay now. It's okay. Okay, yeah. The way that he pronounces some words, the grammar that he used when he was asking some questions, like who are you going to with? So he didn't do the formula right when he was talking about, when he was asking a question. I cannot remember if this is one that belongs to the girl. Where lives your cousin? So he was always very indecisive when he was asking questions. The pronunciation was not very clear. The examiner had to interact sometimes, so interrupt. So, well, not interrupt really, but interact with him. Those are some of the notes that I wrote.
Okay. Thank you, Diana. Did anybody use the rubric to grade the boy or probably the girl?
I did score the girl. I'm just trying to look for the score that I did, the total score.
Okay, Felix, while you look for that information, I'm going to read Felix's comment in the chat box. He wrote, in holistic scoring is focused evaluation of a writing or piece of writing, usually an essay or summary, is based on the overall impression it creates rather than for individual aspects. In class, it is evaluated more about writing than speaking. We can use holistic rubrics also to score not only writing and speaking.
Teacher Diana, could you please explain a little bit more about the holistic? The
holistic is the general performance of the student. So the scorer has in mind the grammar, the phonological control, social linguistic aspects, pragmalinguistic aspects, but the scorer, there is not a descriptor for each one of the criteria, as it happens in the case of the analytical rubric. But there is only one description for the general performance. I mean, if it's excellent and it's 5, the descriptor will include everything about grammar, phonology, completion of the task, fluency, social linguistic aspects and pragmalinguistic aspects. just in one description, in one paragraph. While here we have descriptions for each one of the aspects with the purpose of giving the students, the test takers, feedback about their mistakes in each one of the aspects to tell them, okay, so you made some mistakes in phonological control, you mispronounced these and these words, or you didn't stress the words correctly, you didn't answer completely the question number 2, or the word that you use in question number 3 was not appropriate because the meaning is different, or you are not using correctly the present continuous, for example. So that's to give students like specific details about their mistakes in each one of the aspects that were graded.
Yeah,
Teacher,
you're right.
I
Can
have
I?
one question, teacher.
Who was speaking first? I'm sorry. Who is it?
It's just a short question.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Since I have second graders, I don't teach them yet the present perfect or grammar structures. What I teach the most is vocabulary and how to create WH questions. So when I do that, I should focus on the way they create the questions, right? Not the grammar structure.
Yes, for example, in those places where the approach that is used is communicative. So, for example, this rubric will be wrong because this rubric is giving 3 points for accuracy in the structure. It's giving a lot of importance to grammar, while in the communicative approach, the focus is on communicating the ideas, and grammar is less important. So depending on the approach that the place where you are teaching has, or what you are trying to promote the most, that in that same way that should be reflected in the rubric.
Okay, very good.
So, sorry to interrupt you, teacher Diana. Can you explain to us a little bit more? In this rubric, for example, you have to score a number per item. For example, fluency is one, minor difficulties and pronunciation is another element, sometimes clear, or is just, for example, one rounded or one total score for like one for the interview, one for the picture description, and the
Uh,
other one for the play, or how is the rubric?
okay, this one was designed for the test that you saw, for the test that you watched in the video. In the video, there were 3 tasks: interview, the description of a picture, and the role play. So for the 3 tasks, the rater analyzed how fluent the test taker was, and if the pronunciation was correct. If that was correct for the 3 tasks, the scorer gave, the rater gave the test taker 1 point. The same happened with the 3 tasks in relation to the use of vocabulary and in relation to the structure, so that the maximum score for this test was 5. Yes, that the rater, the scorer, analyzed vocabulary for the 3 questions or for the 3 tasks. Also analyze the structure for the 3 tasks, and the fluency and phonological control for the 3 tasks. So the idea was that here the rater wrote, for example, during the picture description, you mispronounce the word X, for example. So that at the end, if I gave the student here not 1 but 0.7, there was a way to justify that score, that grade. And this is just an example of an analytical rubric that was created for the needs of a language center. Yes, this was tested in that place. But if you see the rubric that is used for TOEFL, for example, it's very reliable because it has been tested different times with many students. But the raters are also trained to use the rubric. So that what is difficult when we test or when we grade writing and speaking is that we can have we are subjective, or we can have a level of subjectivity when we grade. We can, for example, want the students to be very accurate, and even if they are in A1 level, right? So we need to have in mind also that the level that is difficult. Did
So you are
anybody?
talking about the
Diana?
IELTS or the TOEFL? Were you talking about the?
IELTS and TOEFL have a different rubric, different to the one that we see here on the screen. But what I'm saying is that those rubrics are more reliable because they have been tested and used different times.
Okay.
It's an instrument that is more reliable because it has been used more times.
Okay. And they, if I know wrong, do they have different examiners when they do the speaking exam for the interview?
I'm not sure if they use different raters, but I know they are trained in order to use the rubric.
Okay. Okay. So, teacher Diana, I suppose that's the key, right? To in one of the chapters that we were reading for tonight, it said that some of the success, the marking that we do for an oral exam, all the success is sometimes due to how prepared we are, how familiar we are with the rubric, right? Instead of something fresh or new.
Yes, that's important to be familiarized with the instrument, but also it is important that if we belong to the same, we work with other teachers for the same place, for the same school, or for the same language center, we all agree on using the same rubric in the same way. Why? Because if I give more points to accuracy than to creativity, for example, or to pronunciation, and then I promote a student to the next level, and then the teacher from the other level says, no, this student is not prepared, I can understand anything that the student says because the pronunciation is really difficult to understand. So that's gonna be problems in the sense of promoting students and having the same criteria for promotion. So ideally, the teachers who belong to the same place, who work in the same place, should agree on the instruments and should be trained to use them in a similar way.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. So, but is this type of rubric kind of a complete one? Like, you know a lot about examples of rubrics. So would you say this one includes of the elements?
No, this one, what I'm showing you is an instrument that was designed for a group of teachers who thought that was the most important for that place. So for that place, for that language center, it was very important that the students were accurate when they spoke. But
Okay.
as I'm saying, in other places, the most important will be to have students communicate the ideas in a fluent way, and accuracy will be less important, or creativity will be more important. So,
So teacher Diana, can we use this same rubric for like different levels? A1, this is A1, this group. Could it be a
okay,
B1, a C1 student?
what do you think? Here we have on the upper part what the Common European Framework tells us about the performance of an A1 student. And the framework, the Common European Framework, has also some descriptors for each level, for A2, B1, B2, and then, well, you can see here that this is the general description for A1. It has accuracy, fluency, interaction, coherence, range, and sociolinguistic appropriateness. But if we go to the rubric, here we don't have any sociolinguistic appropriateness inside, or as it is not considered here. And what we have here is generally clear and fluid, mostly clear, sometimes clear. Yes, this is to grade an A1. So do you think that the descriptors could be used for other courses, for A2, for B1, B2?
I see.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
No, you
I'm so
go.
sorry. Yes.
Why?
It is important to use them because when you teach English, even in like basic levels, for example, A1, A2, the students need to know how they're doing. They need to know if they have fluency. They need to know if the pronunciation it's like the right pronunciation. They need to know if they are being coherent with what they said.
Okay, so what you said, Jose, is that using a rubric is good to grade any grade. But what about using
Yes.
the same rubric for other levels? Is it okay? This
I
one
think
that we
I
have.
I think it applies.
Okay. And what's the difference between grading an A1 and an A2? What does the rater needs to consider?
Okay, the difference would be that an A1 level is like the most basic level, and it would be like making them understand what mistakes they're making, letting them I'm sorry, letting them know what type of mistakes they're making, so they're able to correct them through a guidance, of course, because you need to guide them. And every time you correct them, what you need to do is like give a feedback. Not only grade the rubric, but also give a feedback. The feedback is very important.
Okay, so what you mentioned, Jose, is that giving students feedback about their mistakes is very important. Now, what if I use this rubric that we see here to grade an A1 and then I use the same rubric to grade a B1. So Sebastian, you raise your hand. So
Yes.
please tell us your answer, your opinion.
Well, I think every proficiency level should have a different rubric because the skills are different. The Common European Framework skills for every level it's different. In this case, for example, it says that has a very basic repertoire of words and simple phrases related to personal details, in particular concrete situations. Just to name the range criterion. Well, it would be similar, but it wouldn't be very basic repertoire. So
Exactly.
it's going to be with a different level. I mean, something basic, and then in B1 they can say complex, and in B2, uh, I don't know. Well, the idea is that the level would change. That's what I think.
Exactly. So the words will change. The rubric for an A1 will say basic repertoire, vocabulary, and as you mentioned, the rubric for a B1 or a C1 will say more complex or more complete repertoire of vocabulary. But even though that is very general, right? How do I know what is basic and what is complete? So what is the knowledge that the grader needs to have in order to be more objective when grading? What do you think?
Well, I think you need to take a look at the description of the level in the Common European Framework. I mean, it's kind of specific in every description. So if you take a look at it, and you will know what students are supposed to do or what students uh, won't be able to do yet because of their level.
Okay, as the scriptures that we have on the screen now, which are for A1, they give us some ideas about what we can expect from an A1 level. I'm going to
So
read.
they always will have elements, I suppose. They always will have parameters to know how to grade those students, right? According to the topics that they did in class, I suppose.
Okay, so Diana mentioned that it's important to have in mind the information that they studied during the classes. That's also necessary. Any other ideas?
I was just thinking that the evaluation won't be, or the test won't be accurate if the examiner doesn't know what points, what topics they cover in class. So it won't be fair. So the examiner needs to have a previous knowledge of the topics that were covered in class.
Uh-huh.
Yes, to complement what Diana just said, it is important that that's very important, and it's important because when you evaluate those aspects, the students or the people would know or will be able to know what way they're taking, what way they're going to.
Okay, so far you mentioned that it's important to have in mind the contents that were studied, the information that is in the Common European Framework related to what we can expect from each level, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Sebastian?
Well, maybe as a matter of an example, according to this description of the A1 level, a student will be able to, for example, to describe what a person is wearing or the colors of clothes people are wearing. It's something very simple, not complex at all. As it says in Fluency, for example, they can manage very short, isolated, and mainly package utterances. So it's like separated words or sentences for them to just describe shortly what they see in pictures, but it's not for them to analyze deeply a certain topic.
Exactly. So according to the framework, the Common European Framework, we can expect that A1 students just mention very short sentences with very basic vocabulary about, for example, personal information or the topics included in for that level, right? Felix, do you have also a comment? Please tell us.
Yeah, I think that this is an international model that all institutions, schools, and other kind of organizations that teach English use as a reference. But it's good to use this, but we can use another kind of resources. I like more the second one, about on the scriptures or skill, I think is completely than the first one. And in my opinion, this second is more adapted to class or to performance in class. I think so. These are according my opinion. I use the second one more than the first one because the first one is a general evaluation. There are other styles that can more adapted to class to teach a lesson, English lesson in class.
So you prefer the scriptures about analytical rubrics to help you choose
Yeah,
the correct score.
yeah, you're right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Julian, do you raise your hand?
Yeah. Hi, how are you doing? I
Good.
like to mention something. Okay, we are talking about this rubric format, which is great. It's helpful. It's a common European framework for reference for use it in a lot of schools and for teachers. It's very helpful. Well, I like to talk about the video um, we watched. I like to know if some of you as teachers had practiced this kind of speaking tests or speaking exams or whatever, because what I saw in this video, I was kind of amazed. I was kind of bored. I was kind of impressed. This girl sit in a chair against the wall, talking about what she's wearing. Anyway, I don't know. It was kind of. I can't find the word. When the guy start talking to her, the partner, the boy start talking to her, if you see the face of that girl, and the teacher didn't say anything. This girl was like, "This, what are you telling me? I mean, what are you talking? You cannot say, you cannot speak English at all." And here I'm in an exam, and you're talking to me like that in that way. I mean, it was the whole thing was miss. You know what I mean? I mean that exam, that test. I don't know this. What we are here doing the rubric for the student, but I like to know a rubric for the teacher because I don't know if that's the way speaking test should be done. I was kind of impressed, really. So I just like to know if some of you as teachers have strategy to take these kind of exams for students, because if someday I become a teacher, I will never do what this teacher did in that video. Never.
What do you guys think about
I
it?
rather do not rubric my students instead of doing that kind of exam. It was pathetic.
I suppose it's depending on the intention of the exam also. For
No,
example,
well,
you have exams like the IELTS and the TOEFL, and they are very accurate. I suppose they monitor every single element in speaking, like the pronunciation, the vocabulary, the grammar. But if it's just exam for your class, for your students, so I suppose you don't need to score each element or each detail. If it's a progress assessment, I don't think you should be so accurate about every single element that you are marking. But if it's, for example, like the TOEFL or getting into a university, maybe there is a reason why the exams are done that way. But I agree with Fernando.
Okay, I'm going to read.
It's more interesting.
I'm going to read your classmates' comments, and we will continue discussing the idea of the questions that were included in the test. Jairo wrote, Canto statements are useful, very specific target language exponents that fall into the different categories of language proficiency. Descriptions for Common European Framework are expressed in terms of the general competences users are to demonstrate. They belong to the global scales. Lisette wrote, I believe to evaluate at A1, we need the basic basis in the common framework of reference instead of topics. I think it is based on the competences that the students have in the language. And then higher road proficiency tests are meant to check both for fluency and for accuracy in such a way that the overall proficiency in the language has been integrated. All standardized tests follow a similar format. Okay, what do you guys think about, I mean, the other students think about the types of questions that were included in that test, in that oral test? Have you seen those type of questions in other types of tests? What do you think about the appropriateness? Lisette, please tell us about, you wrote that you have seen those questions in other tests.
I've seen them in the Cambridge exams. I see. I mean, the idea is to make the students like talk as much as they can, even if the person you have to, present the exam with, maybe is not at the same level of the other person. But the idea is to make them talk as much as you can. I took the CAI exam for Cambridge, and they give us several pictures where you had to describe, the images and talk to your partner about it. And it had like different parameters where each candidate was evaluated differently.
Okay, and what do you think about those type of questions? Could they be better? Could they be more close to reality? Are they okay?
Of the ones of the exam I took?
Yes, you're mentioning that some of those questions were similar to the ones that you watched in the video.
Yeah, it could be better. However, I think it depends on the student of what they can express and take out from the questions,
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Anybody else comments about the types of questions in the video that we watched? Are they, can they be improved? Carlos?
Me, teacher. Hello.
Hello.
Teacher, I think that every person that is gonna receive this kind of exams has to be prepared, because I noticed when I was being prepared for the TOEFL and the Oxford placement test, for example, they were totally different, and you had to be very good at reading. Even sometimes I think they don't measure the knowledge that you have, the proficiency that you have in the language. Is sometimes they just I don't know, they measure like the way that you catch the information, or you comprehend the information. I don't know, it's very weird, because I feel like that when I presented this kind of exams, they try to like to put in this kind of exams like a trick and questions, yeah. And I felt like they would try to measure like the way that you can be logic in the language. Yeah, yes. It's not only the skills that you have in the language, they just measure the way that you can comprehend the structures, or even they put strict questions in this kind of exam. So that's a thing that I think that's prepared by some teachers, if you wanna score good results in this kind of tests.
Okay, I'm going to read Heider's comment. He wrote, thank you, Carlos. The types of questions respond to different language functions and tasks designed to elicit enough language from students that provide clear, solid evidence of the ability in a given skill. And Lisa wrote, it also depends on the level of English that they are evaluating. Sebastian, you raise your hand. So, what's your comment?
Yes, teacher. Well, maybe I was thinking of creating more genuine activities for oral production exams because, well, I don't think it's very likely that you in a normal situation in your real life you're going to ask another person what clothes do you like to wear when you go to a party when you come to the university.
Mm-hmm.
That is not like genuine. So
Exactly. I
it's
completely
very
agree.
artificial. It's really artificial. The activity is not contextualized in a real situation.
Yes, the challenge when we design tests is to make them closer to reality. So, what type of questions do we really ask in real life? We mentioned last time that we use language in an oral way to make transactions, to buy and sell things, but also to interact with people in a social way. So when we design tests, we need to make the questions closer to what we really do in outside the classroom in real life. That's very challenging, although the three tasks that were included in the test that you watched were interview, picture description, and role play, which are used in international tests. The type of questions that were asked for each of the tasks were not that close to reality. So the challenge is to make them close to reality. Um, Felix, you raise your hand.
Yeah, it is difficult to apply a test like this in classroom all the time, but it, it must be applied at the end of a level, and it is good. I think that maybe combine both design test or design rubric in class, and use this by using other resources, technological resources like online maybe or all the time that can help students and evaluate them in other like taking in account other aspects or phases. I think it could be nice.
Okay, thank you, Felix. I'm going to read Alejandra's comment. She wrote, I think these are evaluations designed to measure the level of ability of the students of level, to measure the auditory capacity of reading comprehension of grammar and vocabulary in its majority in a real context. Well, but we have designing tests to measure grammar, reading comprehension, and listening is easier because reading comprehension can be measured through multiple choice questions, for example. But when we score oral and written tasks, that is more complex because there is more subjectivity, and then the design of the test needs to be close to real tasks, which is the challenge. Fernando Julian, you raise your hand. Fernando?
Yep, yeah. No, I totally agree with Sebastian. I mean, we as teachers, we are supposed to motivate our students. Habla bajito, por favor. Un segundito. We are supposed to motivate our students. We are supposed to design these great plans with new technologies, instruments, and so on to make students have fun and learn and be creative and so on. And then we get this video with this teacher, with this student seated against the wall, answering what she's wearing in the school, what she's wearing at home. I mean, that's pathetic. It was kind of depressing, I have to say. And I don't think that's the way we're supposed to test a student. I don't know if that's the normal kind of testing uh, way to measure the level of ability or the level of whatever, but I really don't don't get along with this kind of testing way. That
Julian,
was my point.
you are an English teacher, right?
Teacher,
I mean, you have actually been
No, I'm
teaching
not.
for a,
I'm
you
not.
have not,
I'm not.
okay. I was going to ask you for
teacher.
Jose.
Yes, I will have to agree with what Fernando just said. I am an English teacher. As teachers, of course, we have to motivate our students. Otherwise, in every single class, they will feel bored. And it has happened to me before. I was giving a class, and I noticed when I didn't know about all the things that I could do. I noticed my students were getting bored. So what I had to do, I needed to improve all my classes, start including videos, start including songs, start including new things, new ways of learning English. And that's what I do when I tutor, when I give English classes, particular English classes. I hate the regular process where people read, where people speak. What I do is I change my classes in order for the students to uh, f- fall in love, be in love with English, like love English and love the way they can learn English. Because when I was at school, I hated English with all my life because the classes were so freaking boring. And I remember that they made us read, they made us do a lot of things, different things that they were pretty boring. So it is important for us to understand that if you don't innovate with your students, if you don't give them new resources to learn, the way they learn is not going to be effective. They won't learn English in a nice way, in a good way, if you don't give them good resources to learn.
Okay,
Thank
Fernando.
you very much.
Okay. I would like all of you think about an exercise that you can take to the classroom in order to promote the practice of English in an oral way, but that the exercise is close to reality and that it's related to the vocabulary of items of clothing. How can we help the students to practice that vocabulary in a task which is kind of close to reality? What type of activity could be taken to the class?
So
Are you
one
talking to me?
activity
Well, all of you.
you can take
Okay,
a magazine,
sorry.
fashion magazine, and have fun looking at the dresses and describing the dresses of the beautiful ladies and the beautiful men in that magazine. A magazine or a video where you see the pasarela, whatever, I don't know how to say it in English. The pasarela, this the fashion walk, and you can
Wrong
talk
way.
about the what you're wearing. That's an easy task. That's be creative. I mean,
Okay, so it will be to
for
describe the
example,
picture. It will be describe what people in the picture are wearing, right?
yeah, to describe a picture from a magazine or from a video, or take like a really fantastic dress and talk about it. I don't know, something fun, something fun. I don't really, I'm not interested in what you are wearing when you are at home. You know, that's not interesting for anyone. For
Okay,
anyone.
I would like also your classmates like think about other activities related to what we usually do in real life when we talk about clothes. What other tasks or other conversations can we have in real life when we talk about clothes?
No
Maybe
one is
to
talking.
describe pictures
Okay, but that
because
is, well, besides that one, because it was already mentioned by Julian, to
okay,
describe what the people in the picture are
are
wearing.
wearing.
Yeah. What about going to a commercial center, a mall, and look at the stores that send
Yeah.
different kind of outfits.
Mhm.
For example, like take a walk and talk about the clothes that a man is wearing, or a one beautiful woman, or I don't know.
Okay,
That will be
but it
fun.
will be kind of a role play, maybe, like a role
No,
play.
no,
No.
that will be an observation play. Just sit in a bench and watch that beautiful woman walking in the street, and everyone is talking about her, and then you say, "Oh, she's wearing a beautiful hat." Oh, no way, that dress is awful. Oh my God, look at that color of the whatever.
Well,
All the
so
shoes are.
it will be
You
a
know
role
that?
play between two people talking about what others are wearing and if
Yeah,
they like it or not.
yeah,
It
yeah.
happens in real life.
Uh
Okay.
huh.
Mhm.
Okay.
Criticize.
Exactly. Criticizing what Diana is wearing today, for example.
That's, that's what teenagers like to do.
Lisette,
Criticize.
I'm sorry, Lisette wrote that she would include the topic of weather also uh, in the same class of clothes. Lisette, you raise your hand.
Yeah, I think I would do kind of like a role play. I would include the weather and maybe what clothes we use in. I mean, I teach small kids, second graders. So I would do like a role play where they have to work in groups and maybe give a different type of weather to each group, and they must make like sort of like a talent show where they walk down and they would describe the clothes their partners are wearing, depending on the climate, if they got cold, if they got hot, depending on the climate, snowy. So I would do like a talent show, but where they have to describe the partner's clothing.
Okay. Thank you, Diana. Carlos wrote that it could be to create a magazine, could be also an option. Um, it's not that common, but it could be. What I'm trying to have you reflect a little bit is that since we teach language not as a whole, but we take some vocabulary and some grammar, it's more difficult to create real tasks. But we should try to create them to make the class more meaningful for them. So to have students feel that what they are learning in class is actually something that they might deal with outside of the classroom. Uh, but the restrictions that we have in relation to uh, specific vocabulary and grammar make it a little bit more complex. So you could probably have read or heard about other methods which are more less that restrict less the use of the language. For example, project-based learning, um, which are based on research, and in those cases, the language is not restricted. The focus is on solving problems and guiding the students to help them solve the problems that need to be that need to be chosen or according to their level. So the problem that they need to solve need to be also thought depending on their language, on their level of the language, and also on their age. Good. So what you mentioned about how real the test is, how close to reality is related to the topics of direct and indirect items when we design tests. So that's something that you read. Do you guys remember what is direct and indirect in that context of tests?
Direct items is when you ask the candidates to perform a communicative skill that is being tested. And indirect item, okay, I give you some examples of direct test. For example, when you try to replicate a real life interaction, something that happens in real life. Or for example, you write a statement and a student, an essay statement, and the students have to complain or answer the question of the essay. That would be a direct example. An indirect example, this one tries to measure a student knowledge and an ability by getting or analyzing what is inside the receptive and productive skills in a student. So we have examples of indirect tests, like multiple choice questions, or we have closed procedures. Or for example, when we ask the student to organize sentences, scramble sentences, I think it's called that exercise. Yes, there are some examples. So one is actually measuring the receptive and productive skills, and the other one only measures the communicative skill. It focuses in one.
Okay, so the indirect are less close to reality because in real life we don't fill the gaps, so we don't unscramble sentences, but we just talk or write to communicate. And depending on what we listen or read, we can react, right? So those tests which are more close, which are closer to what we do in real life, which is, for example, watch the news and exchange opinions about the news that we just watched. So those type of tasks that are included in tests are more direct and are closer to reality, while those fill in the gaps and scramble, match, um, choose the correct option are less close to what we really do to communicate. Those are indirect ways of testing. Good.
Hey,
Question.
teacher, sorry to interrupt you. Something that I found really, I'm sure my colleagues thought the same. Something that I found really interesting is when they were talking about multiple choice questions. And there was a point that it was quite negative about it when they were saying that in a multiple choice questions you have option A, option B, and option C, and only one of those is the right one, and the other ones are wrong. So it says that downfall of that type of exam is that you get into the heads of the students wrong ideas. So, for example, if they were not sure about a question and they just try to guess, now they are looking at wrong options. So that will stick into the students' minds, and they will be thinking about it. So he said that that's why not always those type of exercises are really useful. I found that really interesting because I never analyzed or reflected that way about that type of questions.
That's totally right, but just think about your classes, Diana. How many students do you have? Do you really have the time to
Yes,
use
to think about
direct?
my classes.
Yes, I mean to just to think about if you really have the time to design direct questions and to have
No,
students. No, we don't have the time. That's why even
no.
TOEFL, that we pay a lot of money for TOEFL to take that test. We have multiple choice questions because there is no time, and in real life, in schools, in different language centers, we don't have the time to test students, each student, by using real life tasks, like for example, role play the situation or discuss topics. So because of lack of time, because of number of students that we can have in a classroom that are 40 or 30, we don't have the time to test them by using direct types of questions, which should be the ideal way to test them. Probably these places, the schools where we have just 5 students per class, could be an option, but in other cases it's just impossible for the number of classes that we have, number of students that we have.
Teacher, I have something to add.
Jose, yes, go ahead.
At school, at the school where I work, they suggest us for make our life easier when we correct because we have to grade 75 exams. I am a self-contained teacher. It means that I teach science, math, and English. So they advise us to do multiple choice questions so that we don't take that long grading. But I think it's important to know the opinion of the kids, not only with multiple choice questions, but also with open questions.
Yes, I mean, we should have in mind also the process, not only the summative assessment, which is the last test or the test that we have them students take every 2 months, but we should take into account how the student is doing during the 2 months. That's ideally what we should do. But if you have 200 students because you teach not only one course but 5 courses, then we try our best and we try to have in mind the students' progress, but it's really difficult to have in mind all the process of all the 200 students. Lisa, Rory, my school, we only take into account the process through learning experiences. I know that some schools have that type of assessment, which is the ideal one. But in most of the schools in our country, we have 30, 40 students per class, and we are teachers of not only one course, but many. So having that type of assessment is kind of is not possible. It's just not possible. The ideal will be like in Lisette's case, not to have students taking exams, but to have them work on projects and to have them uh, to realize if they are improving through the process, to have them be critical about what they are doing during classes and self-assess their progress. But that can happen if we have less students, right? And less courses. How many students do you have, Lisette? Or how many students are per course in the school where you work, Lisette?
I teach in 3 second graders. I have 25 in each group.
Okay, that you only have 3 courses, right?
We have 3 courses, yes, and
Okay.
25 in each course. We do learning experiences, and that we have rubrics. So we place each kid on the in the process that they are. So the rubric, but we don't do exams.
Okay, in total you have about 75 students, which is
Yes,
which
75.
is different to 200 students, which is more or less
Yes.
what usually teachers have in a school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so that way, that's possible to work with portfolios. It's possible to work with other types of assessment and other types of teaching methods.
We do a lot of role plays, and everything is learned. We try to do it through games, through real life experiences. They also have book, but we don't limit to the book. We try to do always like the learning experiences, the subjects that they have.
What's the name of the school?
Jose Max Leon.
Okay, great. That should be the way we teach, but well, our reality is
Yeah.
different.
And
Okay,
the
well,
kids really enjoy.
sure, because they are learning not by memorizing information, but by doing, and teachers are applying other types of teaching, which it really works.
Yeah, yeah. They also have like cooperative work. So they work in groups of 4 always, and we give them a problem to solve. So they have to solve a problem always. So that's how we work cooperative work as well.
That's actually what we should do. I mean, the most recent methods go in that way: collaborative work, problem solving situations, no exams, etc. Great. So
Yeah.
probably you could share more about your experience in that school in other encounter, right? It would be great to know how education is approached in that place where you work.
Yes, of course. They actually, our bosses are traveling to Spain, and they went to visit the schools that got the best scores in the PISA exams. So they're trying to copy that model that they use and why they do so good in those exams. So they brought us back the information, and this year everything is changing, and we're getting educated in that new education, because there's some teachers like that are not willing to change as easily, because they believe the exams are what can tell you that what kids know. So it's difficult for some teachers, but basically right now everybody has to be in the same page, and copy the model that they got from Spain.
That's important. What you just mentioned, which is that all teachers need to agree on using the same approach, and so promotion won't be a problem, but will be under the same criteria, which is very important. Okay, well, I would like that we review this topic at the beginning of our next encounter, because it is also important that we check the types of tests that we have, and also to listen to Lisette, also to listen to um, other aspects about the way teaching is approaching that school will be important. So we will start our next encounter with a short review about types of tests and other comments related to this topic, and other questions you might have about this. Okay, so I really appreciate your participation. I'm going to stop the encounter now. You know that I have to start a new encounter, so that's why I'm going to stop the encounter now. Does anybody have any comment before we finish?
No, teacher, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. So we will meet next week. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye. Good night.
Bye bye.
Good night, everyone. Be creative. Be good boys. Have fun. Enjoy yourself.
You too.
To you too.
Thank you.
Be good boys.
Be good boys. See you.
And
Have
if you
fun.
are bad, invite me.
You are the best, Diana. You are the best.
Behave badly.